You are on assignment.
Now, a behind-the-scenes look.
Hello everyone, thanks for coming on assignment with us today. I'm Imran Siddiqui here with my co-host Alex Villarreal.
In this episode, North Korea fires another shot across the bow of the United Nations. We'll get details from New York.
An Olympic-sized fall from grace for a groundbreaking South African track star.
The Pope shocks the world. What does his resignation mean for the future of the Roman Catholic Church?
And Afghanistan's musical ambassadors of peace bring signs of progress to the U.S.
This and more is next. We're going on assignment.
North Korea confirmed that it carried out its third nuclear test in recent months. On February 12, the move was in defiance of several UN Security Council resolutions and brought quick condemnation from the United States, South Korea, China, and other nations.
VOA's correspondent at the United Nations is Margaret Bashir. I talked with Margaret about this latest provocation by North Korea and what it means to the United Nations and the world.
Right now, the talks are really between the United States and China on a bilateral level. And the two countries will sort of hammer out some sort of deal, and the U.S. will do it in close consultation with its allies, South Korea and Japan. And so once the U.S. and China can come to an agreement about new sanctions, then they will bring it back to the other permanent members of the Security Council, France, Russia, and the United Kingdom. And then it will go back to the rest of the council. It's a 15-member council, as you recall, and 10 of those council members have rotating membership. So we have 10 council members, including South Korea. South Korea just joined the council in January, and they actually are the president in February. So those countries will then pretty much go along with it. I think in most negotiations in the Security Council, if the permanent 5 members can agree, then usually the other 10 go along with it.
And why has North Korea been able to reach this point of actually testing nuclear weapons? It seems like there's been a much harsher stance taken toward Iran.
Well, definitely the sanctions are very tough on Iran. They've had a great impact on the Iranian economy. We've seen certainly on the economy in Iran. The last round of sanctions a couple of years ago really went after financial institutions that were financing the nuclear industry. But at the same time, we just saw recently that Iran tried to buy 100,000 magnets to be used for nuclear centrifuges from China. So sanctions don't stop the activity. They don't, and we know that. They slow it down. Iran hasn't pushed it to the point of testing, maybe because they're a little more concerned that Russia and China may not support them. Whereas with North Korea, China has a stake in it. They have to, deal with it a little more carefully because it's in their backyard.
Now, getting back to North Korea and the reasons that it gave for this recent testing, it said that the test was just its quote, first response to what it described as U.S. threats. What are these threats that North Korea is referring to?
Well, I think, North Korea often cites these threats in speeches and such and rhetoric. They feel that, the United States is supporting South Korea, which is their enemy. They hark back to the 1950s, to the Korean War. Recently, there were military naval maneuvers in the region between South Korea and the United States, so that's certainly meant to send a message to North Korea that we're watching you. So they consider this hostile, and don't forget there's 25,000 U.S. troops still in South Korea, so that makes them nervous, the North Koreans. It also makes China nervous. They don't like to see the American presence in their neighborhood.
And when it comes to the UN response to this, what are the options right now that we're seeing on the table?
Well, certainly we're not seeing military options, that's for sure. So what does that leave us? That leaves sanctions and more sanctions in the UN toolbox. So right now there's already a pretty strong arms embargo, asset freezes. There are travel bans against individuals in North Korea. So now we're going to see a real tightening of the screws, I think. There'll be new individuals and entities added to these lists. Already ships are being stopped and searched. North Korean ships are stopped and searched under sanctions. Perhaps we'll see a tightening of the monitoring of the sanctions regime, some sort of way to make sure that all countries are cooperating, that, for instance, maybe Syria or Iran or China, won't be able to violate these sanctions as we've had indications of in the past. So I think those are the main things that you'll see. You'll see new individuals and entities added to lists. You'll see a tightening of existing sanctions, but they're going to have to bite a bit. So we'll see what the Council comes up with.
Thanks to Margaret Bashir, VOA's correspondent at the United Nations.
And we're going to take a break now, but when we come back, Sunny Young will be here for a look at the surprising turn in the story of South African runner Oscar Pistorius. You're watching On Assignment.
South Africa's star runner Oscar Pistorius is used to the spotlight. At the Olympics, his was a tale of triumph. A man without legs competing against able-bodied athletes, his prosthetic limbs earning him the nickname Blade Runner. Now, Pistorius faces a charge of premeditated murder for killing his girlfriend. Pistorius denies the charge, saying he and model Riva Steenkamp were deeply in love and that he shot her by mistake. Now, this is a story with more twists and turns than any track, and joining us now to talk about it is VOA's Sunny Young. Sunny, thanks so much for being on the show. Tell us about this case against Pistorius. Sensational
case, Alex, involving one of South Africa's most popular athletes, a beautiful model. Pistorius's defense team has said he shot Steenkamp, his girlfriend, by mistake. Pistorius, who had guns in his home, said he thought there were burglars outside of his home in Pretoria, and several shots were fired. Steenkamp was hit fatally, and a lot of these details will come out in the case.
So Pistorius' claim then is that he thought that Steenkamp was not Steenkamp, but actually an intruder.
Exactly. He felt it was an intruder, and we're going to hear a lot about South Africa's high crime rate during this trial. And Pistorius has said in the past that he wanted to protect himself, and he has had firearms training.
Now, what has Pistorius meant as a symbol for South Africa, and what then has this case meant for people there?
Huge star, Alex. I spoke recently with a sports editor in Johannesburg, and he said Nelson Mandela, the former South African president, #1 in terms of star power, but he put Pistorius in his top 3, maybe top 2 among most popular South Africans. South Africa loves their sports heroes. Hansi Cronje, a former cricket captain for South Africa, very popular athlete. He was involved in a match-fixing trial a few years back, but this is completely different. There's a murder charge here.
Of course, so a huge disappointment, obviously, for all of his fans. What else can you tell us about Pistorius's role now? I mean, he was scheduled. His career has still been going. I mean, he's very much in the middle of his career. He's not a former athlete by any means. So he had all of these races scheduled, but now a lot of those things have been canceled.
26 years old, Alex. You and I both watched him at the London Olympics last year, in which he made history, becoming the first amputee athlete to compete against able-bodied athletes at the Olympics. I was at the London Olympic Stadium. He was very well received by fans in London. The other athletes, they enjoyed competing against him. And now he was described as humble and gracious. But now we're hearing other reports of another side to his personality.
And now sponsors have dropped him, correct?
Within hours after he was charged with murder, a major South African sponsor dropped him. And depending on how long this case goes, most people think other sponsors will drop him. They don't want their company associated with his name.
Of course. All right, Sunny. Well, thank you so much for following this story for us. We appreciate you coming on the show again. VOA's Sunny Young from the sunny side of sports.
Thank you, Alex.
All right, we're taking a break now. When we come back, we'll talk with our religion reporter and a local Catholic priest about Pope Benedict's history-making retirement. You're watching On Assignment.
The announcement by Pope Benedict XVI that he would resign shocked Catholics and non-Catholics alike. A pope has not resigned for nearly 600 years, but the 85-year-old pontiff says someone with more energy should take over the papacy.
Observers say Pope Benedict's successor is unlikely to bring major changes to the church. I talked about that and more with VOA's religion reporter Jerome Sokolovsky, who joined me at St. Joseph's Roman Catholic Church here in Washington for a conversation with Pastor Avelino Gonzalez. Let's take a look. So do you think that then the next pope will be in line with the philosophies that Pope Benedict has exhibited?
They will be in line with the mind of the church, and the church develops through time and it has different perspectives.
It has to adapt to the times, really, to the changes in the world in some ways.
Yes, but you have to be careful with the word adapt to the times, because if that's interpreted as embracing all of the world culture, then that's a problem. So the church is always countercultural. It has been since from the beginning. It has to be, because the church is called to be a prophetic voice in the culture. So if the church embraces all of the trends and movements in the culture, then it loses its prophetic voice.
Now, turning now to some of the challenges that have faced the church in recent years, I wanted to ask Jerome, what's been the perception of how Pope Benedict has handled some of these issues, including the abuse issue that has rocked the church?
The church's spokesmen say that the Pope has dealt with that he actually instituted that a sexual abuse of a child is a crime in the Catholic Church, and he has indeed done that. What some of the victims say is that not enough has been done, that there have been steps taken within the church, but there has been no command responsibility. No one who was responsible at a higher level has actually been penalized from within the church. I don't know if you would agree with that, or?
Well, there has been just in the case in Pennsylvania, where a person that was not directly an abuser, but that did not do a good enough job defending the families, he was prosecuted. So that was
prosecuted by lay authorities, but not from within the church. You haven't had archbishops or required by the church to take responsibility for what happened, for their subordinates' actions. That's their criticism.
Sure.
How would you respond to that criticism?
Even in the secular world, you have a line between someone who is of authority. Is that a responsibility of the head of a department to be responsible for everything that happens in a direct way? If there is not knowledge of the details, then that needs to be considered. The church has been very open with regards to this whole business, with regards to being open to civil authorities. But the church also has to do things according to the mind of the church and be defending also who's innocent.
Jerome, you talked earlier, we were speaking earlier, and you mentioned that you felt that the church is really at a crossroads now. Can you expand on that and describe what you were referring to?
There are a great many liberal Catholics who disagree with the way the hierarchy has taken the church. People who think contraceptives should be not just allowed, but think that it's moral to use contraceptives. So I guess the church has to decide. Maybe you feel that the church has already decided and will continue in that way.
There is a tension in the church. Part of it, I think, has been the lack of a proper formation for Catholics in the last about, I'd say, maybe 50 years. So that lack of formation, that lack of prophetic voice that I was talking about, has really increased that tension between progressives and I would say just people that are in line where the church is, the heart and mind of the church, that prophetic voice.
Finally, if the two of you could identify the number one challenge you feel is facing Pope Benedict's successor.
Well, I feel like it's the priest shortages in places like Africa, where there are many people who cannot participate in Mass because there aren't enough priests for them. Some people are saying that's the case for women's ordination, that if women were priests, that problem would be addressed. But I think women's ordination is basically out of the question. John Paul II basically declared that it wouldn't happen.
So the greatest challenge for the church into the future is the new evangelization, how to re-present the faith to people who have been Catholics or Christians and have rejected the faith for one reason or another, and to bring those back.
And again, Jerome Sokolovsky is VOA's religion reporter. Our thanks to him and to Pastor Avelino Gonzalez at St. Joseph's Church here in Washington.
Well, it's been a year now. Happy birthday on assignment.
Yeah, our year anniversary.
It's amazing. It's amazing how
Can you
time flies when
believe it?
you're having fun. It's been a year since we launched, and we just want you to indulge with us for a moment as we go behind the scenes of our own show.
It takes a lot of people to put together any TV program, including ours. So let's turn the tables and go on assignment here at On Assignment. Take a look.
Today our show is 1 year old. The baby is still young, but can walk and definitely can talk, especially this phrase.
So let's go on assignment. The situation is like this. I think On Assignment is an interesting project because it opens the door to the world about what's going on behind the scenes at VOA.
Morning in the divided Syrian city of Aleppo.
I watch all of the news output of the Voice of America. A note to all our fine VOA producers, we're going to find you. We're going to put you on the air.
Well, there's two reasons. One is
The Virginia Tech shooting.
as part of the U.S.
We try to coordinate as far in advance as we can, and we also try to follow the news cycle as much as we can. So when something happens, we want to be sure that we're on top of it. We want to talk about what that will mean for the future of the position of the papacy.
I'll do beta, you do one of the cameras. And
I'll do my. The thing to remember about a show like this is it's like making a wedding cake. And that means it's made in many layers.
On VOA, so it kind of comes full circle.
I'm working on kind of a fun piece right now. It's one of our music programs.
Well, Alex is getting ready to talk to New York City, and Margaret Bashir is our UN correspondent up there.
Take another question again.
The purpose of using 3 cameras, maybe 4 cameras on these shows is simply because we want to take interviews, give them a different look and a different feel.
Concerned that Russia and China may not support.
I like video editing because it gives you a chance to be creative.
You do whatever you're most comfortable with.
Right now I'm building the rundown, so Martin has given me all the different segments we're producing. Right now it's 2:42 over, but when I go in the control room, I make decisions at that time. I'll shorten the interview, whatever it takes so that the show is timed.
We're starting on camera 3.
Can I say Islamist extremist?
Today I'm just helping out running camera.
I am setting up the camera shots and getting ready for the show.
We're all getting ready for the show. We're about to do 100 sit-ups.
Stand by, everyone. In 5, 4, 3, 2.
General Pervez Musharraf of Pakistan has worn many hats: president, army chief, military dictator, and U.S. ally.
General Musharraf visited VOA in January and talked about Pakistan's...
There's so many different elements.
That's where she comes
There's so many to make
The gatekeeper.
It's really amazing how a show like this brings everyone together. It's almost like we've become our own little family. That's really pretty good.
You could win your iPod today. Just go to VOA. You can win.
We're a great team. We get along really well.
All for one, one for all.
Okay, so all the pieces of the cake are basically baked. Now we just have to go down to the final video edit.
Sunny side of sports.
Just
blog.
go back to the beginning. So I want to make sure we have the right.
Vlad kind of fixes our mistakes in the edit suite.
Yeah, let's. I do my best.
Wait a minute. We're not that bad. Come on.
You could win your iPod today.
Yeah, who's gonna pay my bills while I'm spending all my time writing rhymes while everybody else is
Oh, that's On Assignment. All of our talent.
documented that because I would not have believed any of it.
So as you can see, I hope that the viewers got to see that we do have a lot of fun here. We talk about a lot of serious things. It's very important what our reporters are doing, but we try to manage to squeeze in
We
some
have
fun.
to balance it, to make it interesting and fun.
Exactly.
So we hope you enjoyed it.
Yes, we definitely enjoy it every day working here.
That's true. Moving on. They traveled thousands of kilometers in just a few weeks for concert performances in Washington, New York City, and Boston. They are the members of Afghan Youth Orchestra.
Music was banned in Afghanistan under the Taliban in the late 1990s, but in 2010, the Afghanistan Youth Orchestra was formed, the first in the country in more than 30 years. VOA's Brian Allen has the story.
This is Bolero, It is an orchestral piece by Maurice Ravel, first performed at the Paris Opera in 1928. The composition is played here by Afghan students in Boston, Massachusetts. Classical violins and trumpets sound alongside a rubab and a sitar. The Afghan Youth Orchestra performed this famous piece at the Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C., Carnegie Hall in New York City, and here at the New England Conservatory in Boston. This was their last stop on a tour of the United States, funded largely by the State Department and the U.S. Embassy in Kabul. The young musicians are mostly former orphans and street children, born in a country that saw the Taliban forbid the performance of music outright when they took control of Afghanistan in 1996. Nagin is from Kunar province, a volatile spot in the eastern part of the country. She has had first-hand experience with the Taliban.
My younger brother-in-law, who was in his 20s, took me back to Kunar province for a few days. The Taliban forced him to get out of the bus and then asked him, "Why did you shave your beard? What kind of Muslim are you?" Then they whipped him so badly that his back and hands were bleeding. That is one of the worst memories in my life.
Today, the children are off the street. Music is played freely in their country, and the Afghan Youth Orchestra is finishing up a tour of some of the most famous American musical venues. Nagin will have fond memories of the trip.
New York is beautiful. All three cities we visited are beautiful, but I liked New York the most.
Ahmad Sarmast is the man responsible for this musical development. In 2009, he founded the Afghanistan National Institute of Music in Kabul, and ultimately the Afghan Youth Orchestra.
It's a great pleasure for me that a group of Afghan youth, including boys and girls, has accomplished such big achievements in music in so short a period of time.
With the tour almost over, the students will return to their school in Kabul. They will return to a life that was not possible just a few short years ago, with memories of a trip they could never have dreamed of under the Taliban. Brian Allen, VOA News, Boston.
Definitely an interesting thing to see music returning to Afghanistan finally through young people.
It's always interesting to see music coming back, but yes, it is. And with that, we've come to the end of our show, which is kind of sad for me, but 1 full year of VOA On Assignment on the air. It's amazing. Congratulations to everybody on the team.
Yes, absolutely. And here is to another year. But before we go, we should mention that our VOA photo contest is winding down, but it is not over yet, and you could win your very own iPad. Just send us the photos that best capture the people and places in your life.
And it's pretty easy. Just go to voanews.com/iPad for details and hurry up and enter before March 1st.
From all of us here at On Assignment, thank you so much for watching. We will see you next time.